All right. Good evening. My name is Michael Zwack, class of 2011, and a member of the Rensselaer Alumni Association Board of Trustees. On behalf of the RAA and Office of Alumni Engagement, I want to welcome all of you to our College Discovery event, which is to help our alumni with children and other relatives prepare for the college selection, recruitment, and admissions process. This series is part of a networking program by the RAA called Connections, which provides alumni both in-person and virtual opportunities to engage on strategic topics that are a focus of RPI and the RAA. In this College Discovery series, we hope we leave you educated on the recently evolving college admissions process and requirements at a national level, as well as informing all of you on the value proposition of an RPI education for the next generation if they choose to apply and if they're accepted to Rensselaer. A Rensselaer legacy is a student or alumnus who has a relative who is a student or alumnus of RPI. That could be mother, father, sister, brother, uncle, aunt, grandfather, etc. The Rensselaer Legacy Program recognizes you for making education part of your family tradition at RPI. Although getting accepted and graduating from RPI is on entirely your laurel and efforts, the Legacy Program helps you as very important members of the RPI community to stay in touch with the Institute and with other legacies. And so tonight's event is one of many special programs and networking opportunities that we're able to provide to help acknowledge and thank you for your continued generational support of Rensselaer. Before we get started, I just want to acknowledge Meredith Russo, class of '98, who is another member of the RAA board and is a parent of a number of children about to begin their college discovery process over the next few years. And so Meredith had the great idea for creating this program as an opportunity for all of our RPI alumni to prepare for their journey. So thank you, Meredith. We have an excellent panel for tonight's event. Members of our enrollment team at RPI, parents of current students, and upper class student at RPI participating in the call. During the webinar, you're welcome to submit questions, and as time allows, we'll be bringing them up for conversation with our really exciting panel. For the first part of our event, we'd like to provide an overview of the college admissions process of today. And to do that, we're very excited to have members of the enrollment management team from RPI, including Dr. Jonathan Wexler, Vice President for Enrollment Management. In his role as the Chief Enrollment Officer at Rensselaer, Dr. Wexler oversees the Office of Undergraduate Admissions, the Office of Graduate Admissions, the Office of Financial Aid, and the Office of Pipeline Programs. Under Dr. Wexler's leadership, the Institute has experienced record enrollments, and Rensselaer has also experienced a growth in the number of women and underrepresented minorities who have enrolled. So I just want to first thank you, Dr. Wexler, for coming tonight.
Sure.
And also want to introduce a few others of your team. Ulysses DeArmas, who's the Associate Director for Undergraduate Admissions, and Tracy Dame, who's the Assistant Director of Financial Aid. So I think, Ulysses, you're going to kick us off with an overview, and we'll pull up the slide deck.
I am. So as before I begin, I just want to encourage people, if you want to take a screenshot of any of the slides in case there is information that you would like to refer back to at some point, please do so. And then the other thing is, I know that we have kind of a mixed bag of families here in terms of seniors who are going to be applying to colleges and universities very soon. And then we also have juniors who are probably either starting the application process or the college search process, or you know, they're in some way looking at that. So the two words that I always tell families and students that they have to really adopt into their life are "it depends," because there are over 4,000 colleges and universities around the United States, and everybody does things a little bit differently. And so it can be very frustrating to hear different answers to the same questions. There is no uniformity from one college to another. Everybody does things a little bit differently, so it's really up to each individual student and family to kind of take all of that information in and then decipher for yourselves which will be the better schools to apply to and then subsequently enroll. So the first slide, if you can advance to the next slide, thank you. Right away, you see three different types of applications that a student can use. I'm going to give you the RPI, what it is that we're looking for, but then also try and give you some general tips in terms of what's happening out there for schools that are not RPI. So for Rensselaer, you can use one of those three applications. We do not have a preference as to which one you use. There is the Common App, there is the Coalition application, which is run through an organization called SCORE. And then Rensselaer has its own application, which is the Candidate's Choice. The Candidate's Choice application is really a streamlined version of the Common App. For the Candidate's Choice application, what it really means is we have information already about the particular student. And so when a student goes to fill out the Candidate's Choice application, parts of it will already pre-populate because of the information that we have. I always advise students choose the application that is the most convenient for you to use for Rensselaer. Please be aware that there are schools out there that also have their own individual application. And that is the one that they want you to use. So you need to be aware and you need to kind of do your own little research as to which application is best to use. Next, I want to go into deadlines. Deadlines are very important. Usually they are hard deadlines. And what we mean by hard deadlines is that the application needs to be within the hands or the computer systems of the different colleges and universities by the dates that you see there. You need to be aware of the different options in terms of early decision 1, early decision 2, early action. What does it mean to be a binding application? What is a non-binding application? They all mean different things for different colleges and universities. So for Rensselaer, early decision 1 and 2, those are both binding, meaning that if you apply by those dates, you will hear back early. And it's kind of like a contract that you're making with Rensselaer. So that if you're admitted and things work out financially, you are committing yourself to Rensselaer, and then the application process ends for that student. It is something that is very serious for a student that gets admitted. If you apply early decision to a school and you are admitted, it is the student's responsibility that they contact the other universities that they have sent applications to and tell them to withdraw those applications. That's a very important piece of early decision. It's a big, decision to make, to bind yourself to a particular university early. But for those students who know exactly where they want to go and they want to kind of finish that application process early, early decision is a good way to go. Early action means that you will apply early, you will hear back, but you still have until May 1st to make that decision. And so you can apply to as many early action schools as you can or as you want to. Early decision, you're only allowed to apply to one early decision school at a time. So you can apply early decision to one school, but you can apply at the same time early action to a whole bunch of other schools. So it's one way to, so you need to look at that and make sure that you know what you're doing. Okay, next slide, please. All right, you're going to hear the word holistic application review a lot, and it can mean different things for different universities. For Rensselaer, a holistic application review means that we will read the entire application before making a final decision as a yes or a no. Our first responsibility is to evaluate the student's academic record and to see whether or not they would be a good fit academically for Rensselaer. So to that end, their transcript is the most important piece of information that we will be looking at. And so at Rensselaer, we want to see that a student has completed at least 3 years of science, specifically a biology, a chemistry, and a lab-based physics course, as opposed to a non-lab physics. There are plenty of those out there. So make sure that if you're taking physics or you're looking to take physics, that there is a lab component out that's a part of the course. We want to see 4 years of math. We want to see math in your senior year. That's really important. We pay very close attention to a senior student's schedule and what it is that they're taking. Pre-calculus is the minimum for admission to Rensselaer. Different schools, depending upon what the major is, will require a different level of math. We recommend that if you are on the trajectory to taking calculus, that you do so. The more calculus that you can get under your belt will be very helpful to you, especially as a first-year student at RPI. In your senior year, if you have a choice between calculus and statistics, we recommend that you take calculus. Statistics is a great course. There are a lot of skill sets that you will learn in statistics that will be helpful to you, but the skill sets that you will learn in calculus will have an immediate impact as a freshman. If statistics is your only option left in your senior year for you to take, then by all means, take statistics. Some form of math in your senior year is better than no math in your senior year, okay? We are looking to see the rigor of your courses and what you've taken. To that end, we do not require students to take AP or IB. I always tell students, if you've been a good enough student, that AP is the next logical course for you, then you should challenge yourself with an AP or an IB course. If the next logical course for you is an honors course, then that's the level of challenge that you should take up with your next course. I will refer you to the website in terms of AP and IB college credits. Each school handles it differently. There are a lot of schools out there that don't care whether you've taken every IP course in the book and you've gotten a 5. They're going to want you to take their specific introductory courses. So that's something else that you will need to be aware of as you're going through this particular process. At Rensselaer, the score that you've gotten on whatever AP or IB exams that you've taken is not really necessary for the admissions process. That's more for placement once you've been admitted and you've decided that you want to come to Rensselaer. Test scores, Rensselaer will be test optional once again for the incoming fall and spring. There are some schools that have gone back to requiring an SAT or an ACT. So it's important for you as you're doing your research to find out what schools are requiring SAT and ACT scores and which ones are either not requiring or are test optional. If you've taken an SAT or an ACT and you're wondering whether or not you should put the score or submit your score. Every school, every college or university on their admissions page you should see a middle 50% range of score. Look for that score and then determine for yourself, or perhaps with the help of your counselor, whether or not you should submit that particular score. So for Rensselaer, for the SAT, our middle 50% range is about a 1370 to a 1540, 1520. And so, you know, a 1400 and above is a really good score that you should submit to Rensselaer. And then for the ACT, we will look at the composite score specifically, and our middle 50% composite range is a 30 to a 34. And so a 32 and above is a score that would be very welcome, then you should submit to Rensselaer. Next slide, please. Like every other school, Rensselaer is very interested in finding out what extracurricular activities and leadership opportunities you've had. You know, the question that I always ask students is, what are you passionate about? What are the things that you've been involved in, either in school or in your home community, that you have a real passion for? Those are the things that should be a part of your resume within the application. And then what are the leadership roles that you've had with those particular clubs or organizations? Are you a captain? Are you an officer? Did you help start a club at your particular school? Are you an Eagle Scout? Are you doing community service? Do you have a part-time job? Are you involved in a religious organization or church? Those are all things that should be a part of your extracurricular activities and leadership. As far as recommendation letters go, the key thing to remember is, or to find out from each school, is how many letters of recommendation should you send, or do you need to send? And is a school looking for a specific subject letter of recommendation? So at Rensselaer, we only require one academic or teacher letter of recommendation. And because it's really just one, we really want that letter of recommendation to be from a STEM teacher. So think of a particular teacher that perhaps you've had for more than one course, who can talk about your growth from one course to another. Or perhaps think of a teacher who is also a moderator or a coach of one of your activities or hobbies or things that you're involved in at school or in your community. So somebody who can talk about your work ethic in the classroom, but then can also talk about your leadership outside of the classroom. Be mindful that, you know, whatever it is that a particular school asks you for, that's what you should send them. And your guidance counselor or college counselor generally will write a letter of recommendation for you as well. And those are always helpful to any admissions office. And then the essay and personal statement. We read all of the different essays and personal statements that a student submits. The purpose of the essay is for us to get to know you a little bit differently from what we've already seen within your application. So we are not looking for the next great American novel. That's not the point of the essay. What's a good story to tell about yourself that would be kind of cool for us to know? So what would be something that makes you quirky or nerdy? What's a lesson that you've learned throughout your high school experience that would be something good for Rensselaer or for a college to know? Be aware that some colleges sometimes ask some really quirky questions in terms of either essays or short answers that they want. So be aware of that and be prepared to kind of write something about yourself that perhaps you never thought that a particular school might ask you to write about. Also be aware that there may be some specific majors that will require you to write a second essay. So at Rensselaer, if you're applying for architecture, you will need to write a second essay about why you're interested in architecture. Game design, our games and simulation arts and sciences major also has a similar second essay. And then our accelerated medical BSMD program has a second essay asking, why are you interested in being a doctor? So otherwise, be prepared to talk about yourself. Be prepared to talk about why you're interested in that particular school. So for Rensselaer, we do ask, why are you interested in Rensselaer, as a separate question to your regular essay. So, find something that's going to be good for you to write about in terms of why you're interested in Rensselaer. And then in terms of portfolios, architecture at Rensselaer requires you to submit a creative portfolio, and then those other programs, they are optional. Architecture portfolios pretty much across the board will require some type of a portfolio. If you're interested in something that does not require a portfolio, please do not send a portfolio. So if you're interested in engineering or business or science, and you have this great CD of you playing piano, or you've got, a bunch of apps that you've put together, if we're not requiring them, please don't send them to us, simply because no one will be listening to or watching them. We have no way of really evaluating a portfolio of that nature. For the portfolios you see listed in the slide, those portfolios are submitted online and they go directly to the department. So those professors are the ones who evaluate the portfolios for those particular programs. Right. Next slide.
Ulysses, just maybe a quick question because it's timely. Advice or perspective that you have on homeschool applicants, or maybe those transferring to a four-year university from community college?
Sure. So we have the only difference for a homeschool student is we would like to see a letter of recommendation outside of the teaching parent. Otherwise, pretty much everything else is the same. And then I do have a slide for transfer students that is coming up. Okay. So what's new at Rensselaer? For those of you, if you apply before the December 1 deadline, which is early action, there is an automatic fee waiver. New this year for students who are applying or who are admitted through our Early Decision 1 and Early Decision 2 programs, Rensselaer will be meeting the demonstrated need once families have filled out both the FAFSA and the CSS profile. Students need to be U.S. citizens or permanent residents as well. And even though we would love for you to come to visit us, to see what the campus is like, please, we are aware that that's not always possible. Be on the lookout for regional information sessions. We like to take the show on the road throughout the fall. So I know I'll be doing one or two of them, especially in the DMV area. So be on the lookout for those. If you're not able to come to campus, those are good opportunities to get a taste of what Rensselaer, what we have to offer in your own home community. Next slide. So here's a good one for transfer students. Nick Rosado is our director of transfers. I would recommend that if you fall into this situation, Nick Rosado is the perfect person to ask questions of. And at some point, I can put Nick's email address in the chat in case you want to ask questions, but feel free to take a screenshot of this particular slide just so that you have the information at your fingertips. Next slide. All right, so we at Rensselaer, we are very well aware of how expensive an RPI education is, but we're also well aware of how well our students do upon graduation in terms of average starting salaries. So these are some statistics from some different magazines of how well Rensselaer does in terms of return on investment. And next slide. And if you're able to, an in-person information session and campus tour, you can go to that link and register. We have 2 fall open houses coming up, one on the 26th, Saturday, and then Saturday, November 9th. And if you're not able to come to campus, we do offer virtual tours. There are a few times during the month where we do webinars as well. And as I mentioned earlier, we are taking the show on the road, and we will be doing some information sessions, maybe somewhere close to you, where you can come and meet an admissions officer and learn more about Rensselaer that way. Next. All right. And so thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to speak with you. And now I'm going to turn the rest of this presentation over to John.
Thanks, Ulysses. And that was awesome. And gives you a little bit of a rundown. What I thought I would do in talking with Michael and others is just kind of give an overview of what's going on in the field. What are we hearing? And then want to open up to questions. One thing that is changing, most of the parents on here know it, is that the average student now is applying to 11 colleges per cycle. 5 years ago, that was probably 7.5 to 8. So, and keep in mind, there are fewer students actually going to college. So that means the volume of applications, it's almost like a false positive. So we're very aware that students have a lot of options, and just because we get an application in, that is great, but there's still a lot of work to do, and that's why we do a lot of efforts to both on campus and off to bring them on. Wanted to talk about the different opportunities for which to apply to RPI, and Ulysses had highlighted this. These are terminologies are very similar from schools, but dates are different. I want to repeat that again. Dates of decision of deadlines are different. So we're just going to talk about Rensselaer. At Rensselaer, the early decision 1 and 2 is November 1st and January 3rd. And what does early decision mean? Just to go over again, that if you apply and are accepted, the university is expecting you, meaning you, the student, to pull your applications back from other schools where you may have started it as a regular student, meaning regular decision or early action, because by applying early decision 1 and 2, you're telling us we're your number one choice. And also, this year we're meeting 100% of demonstrated need for students who do early decision 1 and 2. And what we're trying to do is, as an institute, to put the most financial aid we can to the students who really want to be here. What does demonstrated financial aid mean? It means the information we garner from the CSS profile and the FAFSA that determines how much need the household has. We can get into that a little. Early action. We created this about 5 years ago, give or take a year. This is a deadline is December 1st. What this does is a student applies earlier than the regular decision, which we'll get into. They apply by December 1st, and they get their decision by the end of January. So less than 2 months in most cases. In addition, because we're a CSS profile school, in most cases, within a week or 10 days, they're also able to get their financial aid package. So ideally, the student knows what his or her situation is, and they're able to maybe visit in person or have contact with a counselor earlier, or financial aid with questions earlier in the process. Regular decision is a deadline application of January 15th, and we usually get a decision out by the end of the first week of March. Wanted to repeat again, students who apply for early decision 1 or 2, early action, or regular decision, but just get their application in. Everything doesn't have to be complete like transcripts on, but if they get the application in, we will waive that application fee by December, on or before December 1st. So that's a nice benefit. We talked about it. There's a number of ways to engage. We do a number of webinars, which are really good. They're obviously, we're not doing as many as we did, and we don't want to do during COVID because we're open. But what I think was really unique, what I like, and what I think is we do a very good job with, is two things. One is the departments. Single departments are doing webinars where faculty come in with current students in many cases and the admissions liaison, and they walk you through what is going on in their program. And it's not always the larger programs. It could be many of our programs in Haas or LAUI or architecture or some of the smaller school programs within engineering or science. So that provides a unique opportunity. The other thing that's great about that is usually the students that are participating from high school all have similar interests. Then we'll connect with each other and ask the similar questions in chat, and it really brings out great interaction. And all those meetings. So if there's other questions, and many times, I believe, and USC's can stop me later, I think we might video some of them and post them online from that standpoint. We offer a virtual tour. We know that students aren't able all to come to campus. And for those of you who are alums, who are parents, but maybe not have been on campus in a few years, you're able to see some of the new facilities on campus, whether it be Impact, our new Commons for food, our new Panera, in the student union. So those are cool things. We have takeover, Instagram takeover days. They're theme-based. And as UC said, I don't want to talk too long. We have a lot of regional events. And what's great about the regional events, we'll go to parts of the country and we'll have the students there. And obviously the parents will have, usually our goal is to bring the counselor or associate director. In USC's case, he handles one of the areas he handles is the greater Washington, DC area. He's there. So he's connecting with the students that he sees, and also he's going to read the files of, or at least be the first reviewer. And many times we bring alums with us from that standpoint, who in many cases, they didn't grow up there. They relocated there because of the job opportunities coming from RPI. And so they talk about how they got to where they are, and they are very engaged. And what's great is some students may be shy at that session, but they take their email and the alums will tell us, oh, I got a follow up from so-and-so last 2 days later, asking me about the internship or asking me about Dr. So-and-so. Did he have them? And it's great from that standpoint. Next slide, please, if there is one. I think there is. So the majority of colleges in this country have moved to test optional. You read about the ones that have gone back to it. It's probably at the private level, probably under 30 that are back to it. Many of them you were aware of. Many state institutions like in Georgia and Florida have brought it back because the legislature has mandated it. So it's different than being at a private. We still get over 50%. We, meaning RPI, this year, about 60% of the students who applied and were accepted submitted a test score. In ACT or SAT, USC's talked about the ranges and what you should and shouldn't do. We super score, which means we take the best score from each section, which is a benefit to the students. And obviously the question that may come up is, well, how do you review a student? And USC is probably better answering this than me, but how do we review a student that hasn't submitted a test score? Well, obviously we weight other things heavier, curriculum, extracurriculars in some of those cases. But we haven't really found a variance of that great that has us bring the test score back. Secondly, any of you are on this Zoom from California, there's been major problems over the last 5 years with getting testing sites available for enough students to get in. And so we actually have been requested numerous times by college counselors out there, don't bring it back. because what will happen is our students are starting to create lists. And if you are test mandatory, you're going to be off the list because it's very hard for them in many cases. And particularly students of disadvantage have some disadvantage, obviously, because they don't have the same ability to get to different sites as other students. Many of you know the SCOTUS case. What we saw this year, nationally, you've seen it at MIT and some other places, they saw huge drops in their incoming class. We saw a little bit of a drop. We think a lot of that is more affiliated with the FAFSA fiasco, which I'll get to next. We have done, I'll give the admissions team a big thumbs up. We recalibrated the entire review process and created a category called lived experience index. I hope I have that right. I'm pretty close. They're basically taken into the lived experience that the students have from that standpoint, because our staffs, and so you know, we follow working with our general counsel. When Ulysses and the team, when they get a file, they do not know the ethnicity of a student. That is stripped when it comes to them. You see it in the data at the back end, but when they reviewed files, they did not know that. So financial aid, it is a huge deal. We are aware of that. So last year, everybody probably knows about the fiasco debacle. So just in case you don't, FAFSA was not available until April, is basically what it comes down to for students to get that information and it be submitted. The delay had major impacts on the whole industry. So take a step back now, where we are now. One, we are a CSS profile school. What is CSS profile? It is an additional form to submit, which has additional questions for financial aid. 300 out of about 3,000 to 4,000 schools that have this form. This CSS profile allowed us to package and allows us to package in case the FAFSA goes down. We've always used it as a backup. Now it's becoming the lead. So FAFSA, we are being told, so what they have publicly said is that this, so normally, for those of you who are parents, remember right about now, you begin doing the FAFSA form online, and it's October, a few years back. It is not available yet. It is supposedly going to be available December 1st. We are hearing behind the scenes it could be end of December. Needless to say, that's a big difference because most places are shut down over the holidays, so that you actually add 6 weeks to the process. Here's the other problem. Just because the FAFSA is up, they have not guaranteed to universities, and this is an RPI issue. You guys know that. It's everybody. They have not told the universities when we get that information. And the biggest problem they're having is their computer system of student puts in information, new forms, new information, getting that information to the universities so they can receive a package. That problem has not been resolved yet, from what I've heard. I would anticipate normally we would have those done by January. I think it's going to be March now. And I hope I'm making sense and I can answer any questions. We are strongly encouraging, and even if you are not applying to RPI, with shame on you, but if you're not, then those schools that have the CSS profile, do the CSS profile. It will be the best thing you can do. For schools that do not have the CSS profile, many of them are going to go with the formula they used last year. So put the FAFSA in, and they may have to do other things. I would also encourage you, when you get your results back, to print them out, because some schools may ask to see them if they can't get them. It sounds very 1980s, like you're faxing it, but it might be that way. And I'm hoping it's just one more year of these hurdles, and then, because ideally this form, the FAFSA form, as you've done it, it's slimmer, it's easier. It's not the form that's the problem per se. It's the mechanisms and the computer systems that get that information to the universities. That's the problem. And then some students have had areas where if you leave a question blank, it doesn't tell you which question blank it's not going through for. So there's that. Next. Just wanted to let you know, so we have a wide range of scholarships. So let's get terminology. A scholarship is awarded to students on academic merit. And so we don't look at financial aid for the scholarship. And we have a wide range of scholarships. One of our more popular ones, it's been around 107 years, is our Rensselaer Medal Scholar. That's a $40,000 a year award. That's awarded annually. One, on the scholarships, they remain the same for all 4 years or 5 if you're in architecture. Two, we don't have a minimum GPA to keep the scholarship. We think it's hard enough at RPI. We don't want to put any more stress from that standpoint. Grants in many cases can be need-based. So once we get that CSS profile in, we get the FAFSA information in. If a student has a scholarship and there's still need available, potentially there's additional aid that can be awarded to that student, and that's in RPI grants. It could be outside grants. Many of you from a church, synagogue, etc., may have grants that we can put in. As you go further on in your time at Rensselaer, many of the departments have grants they can put in for doing research and such. Some of them can go up to $5,000, and that's on top of what's already going in there. Loans. So we always package with federal loans, which I encourage all parents to at least put in for the FAFSA and see what they are. You can always turn them down. We do not package with parent loan, what I call plus loan. We don't package with that, meaning you're not going to see that in your initial package. If you'd like that, you would contact Tracy or someone in the financial aid office and they can work you through that. But we like families, 2 reasons. One, we want to be as transparent as possible of what the cost is. 2, a parent loan requires a credit, from the parent, and it's also in the parent's name, not the student's name. Finally, work study. This has been the big change over the last 5-10 years. Work studies are real jobs now, meaning on the salary side. Our average work study, off the top of my head, probably is $16 to $18 an hour, and on campus. So the giving the tours, you don't have to go off campus to get those jobs. The good part about that is if you work in admissions, you work in financial aid, you work in the library, we know when students' exams are. We know when the quizzes, we know when the best stress times of the year. We don't expect the students to come in and work those weeks. So we understand that and we accommodate accordingly. Last year, nearly 100% of our domestic students received some form of financial assistance, either from scholarships or grants. Also, one of the things we've done is all U.S. citizens, permanent residents, Canadian citizens are automatically considered for merit-based awards. And there's a limited amount of merit scholarships opportunities for undergrads that are both studying in the U.S. and studying abroad. Next, please. Great. Michael, would you like to open up any questions?
Yeah, I actually have,
I haven't maybe track of time. It's hard for me to talk and keep track.
No, you're doing all right. And maybe a question for you or Tracy.
Absolutely.
True or not true, SAT scores or ACT scores substantially impact merit-based financial aid?
I would go to Ulysses or Tracy. My gut is, it depends. As Ulysses said earlier, tell me what the GPA, tell me what the curriculum, tell me what other things the student's doing. We've never been a place just about the test score. I mean, honestly. But I'll leave it to Tracy or Ulysses, and then maybe Tracy.
Tracy would be the best person to talk about that.
Yes, so we look at the big picture. We don't really look at the GPA or the test scores. We look at the students' applications and, see what they've achieved and who they are and what they're about. And so that's what we base our merit scholarships about.
Great. And then, maybe one other question before we go on to the next group. Have we seen any trends in deferments after a student is admitted? So quote unquote gap years.
The constant number I've seen is about 30 to 32 a year, give or take. And that's remained more since COVID. Let me say that. I've seen more since COVID, but since 2022, that number remained the same. I think we probably saw a little spike more this year. What I'm expecting is I think students, it's going to be interesting to see if this happens or not just Rensselaer. I think a lot of students went to their local publics because of the FAFSA debacle. They're doing okay there, but it's not where they want to be. And so they're either going to spend a year there or 2 years there and then transfer. So it's not a deferred, not dodging your question, but I think that's the other element. But I do think there are some students that decided to do an international experience because of the FAFSA, and said, you know what, forget it, I'll just come back and come back next year.
Okay. And we do have the chat open. If there are additional questions for enrollment management, we can go back to at the end of the session. But I do want to introduce the next members of our speaker panel this evening. And I'm grateful that we have John and Jennifer Mazzarello joining us. The Mazzarello family has 2 children currently attending RPI. Sophia, who's a class of 2026, a junior in the Lally School of Management and Technology, and John, a class of 2028, first-year student studying nuclear engineering. And I think we might even have another Mazzarello apply to RPI next year, maybe. So John and Jennifer, thanks for joining tonight. First off, what was your experience? I know you had a few different challenges. Sophia was your first child. You helped navigate through the college process. And then this past year with John and all the bumps with the new FAFSA rollout, what would you want to share with this group?
I think from the experience of having 2 students go through in different landscapes, one of the things we would stress the most is starting the process. Don't let your student wait to the last minute to submit things. Sometimes there can be problems with submissions. You want to give them the onus of preparation. And then if they do have questions, the biggest thing that we kind of stressed with our students was for them to take the onus of making the phone calls and the emails, because this is their education and their process. Why we're always there to help support them and maybe guide them what questions might be appropriate. They're the ones who have to be partaking in this process.
Yeah, I think the other thing we learned is the unsung hero is our guidance counselors. I think without them, we would have failed through the process. That's what they're there for. I would encourage all parents to make sure their students leverage their high school resources as best as they can.
Right. And start it early insofar as, are you taking the courses you need to be able to apply to the colleges and universities that you're interested in? By having the conversations of what they might be interested in, where they might be interested in going, you can help look at the requirements and make sure that they're meeting all the needs so that they're not sorely disappointed because they don't have something they should have had.
But the biggest advice, though, is just start the process
Early.
Yeah, the fall season is a busy time for seniors, whether it's sports, the stress of starting a new school year, all their school activities. It gets extremely busy and stressful for them. So I would encourage all parents to make sure that they start that process really early.
Sounds great. You sound like parents that don't make mistakes, but you might have a few lessons learned. What would you do differently?
By the second time around, we definitely learned the importance of the preparation before you go to a school visit. Asking your student, okay, what is attracting you to this university? Why do you want to go there? Who do you think when we're there you would want to speak with? Because when you're going on visit days, you obviously have an itinerary, so you can really kind of plan your limited time there. And also, if you change your mind, you have other options. These kids are going in and they know exactly what they want to do until they get in there and start doing it sometimes. Do you have an option? Can you stay at this school that you really like if you don't want to follow that particular path of study? So you learn that more the second time around, I think.
All right. And then, getting ready to have your youngest child go through the admissions process, what's your pro tips? What advice do you have for parents starting this process?
Our youngest is a junior right now in high school. So the importance of, the second semester of this year, really kind of getting more of a comprehensive list of where he might be interested in looking and taking advantage of the summer before senior year. Like my husband said, it's just so busy. Being able to get the Common App done, a lot of the general things you can do for an application before they set foot in school for the fall, it just will save them so much angst during that process.
And just try to stay organized. Helps everyone keep everyone on track. foster independence. You can steer your student in the right direction. At the end of the day, it's their decision. It's their opportunity. They really should take the lead on making sure that they submit the applications on time.
Right.
Supportive.
And
And then have just an open line of communication. You know, we're fortunate enough that our students have a pretty good head on their shoulders. So we try not to be too overbearing and just steer them in the right direction. Obviously, help them and support them along the way, but it's really their process. They should own it.
great. And I know they're doing quite well at RPI, you know, for both of them. So congratulations. And maybe there's a third in the future with a RPI degree.
For having us.
All right. And I do want to introduce, and saving the best for last, one of our current students at RPI. Ava Sklenar, class of 2027, is a sophomore from Western New York. Ava is studying civil engineering with also 2 minors, one in management and one in sustainability studies. Ava interned over this past summer with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in Buffalo, New York. And to also keep herself busy, she's also an admissions counselor or admissions ambassador, excuse me, while on campus. So Ava, I really appreciate you joining us tonight.
Yes, thank you for having me.
All right. So
go
I
ahead.
guess, yeah, you know, just stepping right through, like, what was easy about the process? What was hard through the admissions process for RPI?
Yeah, looking back on the college selection, because it was 2, almost 3-ish years ago, when I began. Some aspects were more straightforward than others. For one, I would say the wealth of the online information made researching the schools that I was looking at much easier. So like those websites like College Board, and then the individual college sites provided me detailed insights into the programs, campus life, and then what kind of admissions we're looking for and the requirements to apply. So those resources helped me and allowed me to create a solid list of schools that aligned with my interests and goals. But I would say on the flip side, a few things that were hard about kind of the process were probably narrowing down my choices. Just because, I obviously ended up at a great school, but there were other great options out there. So definitely it was overwhelming to kind of figure out what school was the best fit for me. And personally, the financial aspect I think would be the most daunting, or was the most daunting, just because understanding financial aid, scholarships, and then kind of the true cost of the attendance added that extra layer of stress. So filling out the FAFSA was a confusing task, even though I wasn't doing it during the whole debacle that was recently. But I guess I would say I was most worried about like how much debt I would be taking on. But ultimately decided that the cost of RPI was well worth it, just due to the level of education I would be receiving.
Right. I know we don't do redos for exams at RPI, but if you had a redo for the admissions process, Ava, what would you do differently?
So I personally started very early. I am a type A person and the oldest in my family, so I've always had that, the type A personality of kind of doing things early. So I started my process early. But if I were to change one thing, it would probably be something very small. When I was applying to schools, I heard from several people recommendations to create a new email address, specifically for when my applications were submitted. So I guess that would be the only thing I would redo is the reason for that being just because I'm currently and happily enrolled at RPI, I still field several emails a week from different colleges trying to recruit me. So yeah, nothing like super specific for the application process. That's just something very small.
Okay. And, any other advice, Ava, you would give students going through the college discovery process?
Yeah, so as a college student who kind of recently navigated it, I do have a few pieces of advice that I definitely would like to share. So first, kind of like has been mentioned, start early. The earlier you begin researching schools and preparing for the applications, I personally found it is way less stressful. Second, I would say is know what you want. Reflect on your interests, values, and what you hope to gain from the overall college experience. And I would say the one major thing that kind of helped me and opened my eyes and helped me decide on a college were those college open houses. They were invaluable to my admissions process, just because they allowed me to explore the campuses, meet faculty, connect with current students, and I was able to gain a real sense of the school's culture and environment. Um, and then kind of coupled with the open house and all those opportunities, the Q&A sessions that were with the open houses allowed me to clarify, any academic programs or resources I had questions with, or, helping me determine which colleges aligned with my interests. And I guess I would say the last bit of advice would be to just remember that rejection is part of the process.
Great. And, I think maybe something for those on the call who have sophomores or juniors in high school, haven't yet planned out their senior year of high school and their curriculum, but you have a pretty unique background, right? And you were taking engineering and construction classes your senior year of high school, which, probably helped Ulysses review your application. But from what I've heard, also, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers found you for your sophomore, freshman to sophomore internship based on some of that CV. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So paying attention to, what's your high school, course catalog, and maybe talking with your guidance counselor is very important as well, even before the college process starts.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for, offering, your perspectives. And I know it's a busy study night for you, so much appreciated.
Of course.
Yeah, great. And I want to ask the panel a few questions we've gotten from those attending tonight, both sent in during registration and then during the discussion. Maybe passing it back to the enrollment management team. Does an application really only get 8 minutes of review time?
That really depends. Again, it depends on the counselor who's reading the application. This is my 19th year at Rensselaer, so I'm very secure in what it is that I'm doing. I know what to look for, and so yes, I can get through an application pretty quickly, from the transcript to test scores to letters of recommendation to the essay. Those are all things that I can review pretty quickly. Sometimes you have a younger counselor who isn't as experienced, and it will take them a little bit longer. So each counselor is different. Each counselor reviews applications differently, but we do get through them and we do read the entire application. I think that's the key thing to keep in mind.
And Ulysses, can you also speak to, what, if any, assistance we provide legacy students, both during the admissions process and for financial aid?
We like to know whether a student is a legacy and what their connection to Rensselaer is, whether it is through a parent, a sibling, or a grandparent, an aunt or an uncle. We like to know that. It's noted on their file. Whether or not it has any bearing on the financial aid piece, I don't know that. I like to keep myself in the dark when it comes to the financial aid piece. I stick to the admissions situation. So I'll let financial aid handle that.
We also like to know that the student is, has a legacy, but we don't have specific merit scholarships for legacy students. We do have a wide variety of merit scholarships, but it is not one that we offer.
And I just want to add one thing. It doesn't put a thumb on the scale on the overall process, like you've heard at other schools. And actually, we have very small, and many of them, I think we might have more than let us know, but the number is very small on a year-to-year basis compared to a lot of other schools from that standpoint. And we end up, what we're more, sometimes I'm curious, like we have on this call or Zoom, is when I love it when siblings come, because especially if they're close to being at the same time, because that tells us we're doing something right at the university. That's how I feel. So that excites me. We also look at that, and statistically, I'm a data guy, there's a higher chance that student's gonna come, because why would they go through all this process? They know what their brother or sister's gone through. If they were having a bad time, they're not gonna follow suit. And so that's what but once again, it does not put a thumb on the scale in the process. I just want to be clear on that.
I think John in nuclear engineering and Sophia in management, there's a high likelihood they're not running into the same classes, right? Right, John?
Yeah.
Jennifer? Yeah. And I guess maybe when you were doing the, college tour process with, your two children so far, like how are you scoring? Obviously, academics was one large component of it, right? And you're from the Northeast, so you understand the climate. What were the other things you were keeping your kids mindful of when they were thinking about where to go?
A big thing was availability if they changed their mind with what they wanted to. And RPI offers such a wealth of different programming. Another thing was the receptiveness of not only professors, but just general adult presence on campus to give them assistance when they needed it, to answer questions. For both of our kids in very different schools, anytime they've ever had a question that needed attention, they never really had any delay in someone getting back to them. They never felt like they were stranded on their own, just enough. So that made a big difference. And when John was making the decision, he was one of those kids that it was 11:59 the night before he had to decide. We had no idea where he was going to choose. And it was 3 schools that were very similar to RPI, similar financial aid packages. And the biggest thing that tipped it for him was Sophia's experience of when she had a question and needed assistance, she had someone there to help her out.
Right. Ava, I have one more question for you. As an admissions ambassador, you're doing a lot of tours for prospective students. What's the most common question you're asked?
I would say most common question would be, what are the academic resources that RPI provides? So I always like to kind of share one of the reasons I chose RPI was because of all of the academic resources and all of the mental health resources we offer here. Although we are known to be very academically rigorous, on the flip side, we have so many opportunities for students to get help and kind of never feel alone, whether it's academics, social life, things like that.
Great. Great. Well, on behalf of the RAA and Office of Alumni Engagement, I want to thank everyone for attending this evening's program, especially to Dr. Wexler, Ulysses, and Tracy from the enrollment management team, John and Jennifer Mazzarello, and Ava for your participation in what was a really fantastic presentation and discussion. I hope for those who attended that we've helped you better discover the college journey that's best for your future. And like everyone said, hopefully it's RPI. For awareness, the event's recording will be published on RPI's YouTube channel. And any questions that we weren't able to answer, which I think we hit them all, will be responded to and shared with all of those who've registered. And you can always send a follow-up email to alumni@rpi.edu, and the Office of Alumni Engagement team can assist. So again, we look forward to your participation in future events and want to thank you for attending tonight. So thank you all and have a great night.
Bye, guys.